This broadcast of In Focus is being made possible through the support of Reed Health. Reed Health, right beside you. And by First Bank Richmond, with 8 locations serving Wayne County. First Bank Richmond and you, doing great things together.
And good evening. Thanks for watching this edition of In Focus here on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of WCTV. Glad you're able to join us. This is going to be an interesting hour. I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about yet. It's just kind of on the fly. Like last week, I walked in here with Mayor Snow and decided we were going to do 90 minutes, and I did not have a single question written down, and somehow we got through it. Tonight, we're going to do an hour with Wayne County Commissioners President Ken Paust. I don't have a single question written down, and somehow
Very good.
I think we're going to get through this pretty well. Looking forward to this conversation. A lot about Wayne County. We went through a lot of things with the mayor last week. Some of them were not the obvious things, and I've been chided a little bit this week because I had the mayor in and I didn't ask him about the old Reed Health building and a couple of other things. There have been updates about those things going on, and there will be in the future. There were some things that we talked about last week that we don't always cover. And that's kind of where I want to go also with Commissioner Paust tonight. Some things that the county does that you may or may not be aware of. We're going to get into some of the conversation you've probably been hearing if you've been watching the commissioners' meetings over the last year. There is a lot of work going into the buildings that Wayne County owns. We're going to talk about some of that and some other things that he may or may not know we're going to deal with. A couple of things I want to do first. If you have contacted us anytime since last August, you have probably talked to our administrative coordinator, Cindy Ropp. Today was Cindy's last day, and I want to publicly thank her for her work with Whitewater Community Television. It takes a dedicated staff of people to do what it is that we're able to get done for the community, and Cindy was a part of that. And we appreciate her support. We do have a new administrative coordinator. Her name is Michelle Thompson, and Michelle started working with us last week. So beginning tomorrow, you call in. Michelle will be the voice that you talk to. Be nice to her. We want her to stay. Also, 21 for Fun, Whitewater Community Television's 4th annual fundraising event. Mark the date on your calendar. It is Saturday night, June 17th. We're going to be at the IU East Student Events and Activities Center here on the IU East campus, 2325 Chester Boulevard, 7 to 11 p.m. It's kind of a casino night, 7-Eleven, get it? Okay, fine. It's really a great time. If you haven't had a chance to be there, mark it on your calendar. It's Father's Day weekend, so Dad gets to come and play some blackjack, craps, roulette, and if he doesn't know how to play, this is a great event for him to learn because you get to play some games you've never played before. And also next week, I'm actually looking forward to. I didn't grow up here, so very few people know of my background. But when I was in high school, I was one of those speech kids. I did speech and theater. So one of the stories around here that really has kind of grabbed me over the years is the rebuilding of the Richmond High School speech team. And I think we've got it worked out that we're going to get some coaches and students from the RHS speech team to come join us, and if we talk nicely enough to them, some of them are going to perform for us too, and I'm really kind of looking forward to that. It is a dedicated group of students that get up on a Saturday morning, sometimes at 4 o'clock, get on a bus at 5 to trudge to a school to perform for 4, 5, 6 hours, look their competition in the eye and go, yeah, I am better than you. So we get to talk to some of them next week, and I am looking forward to that. But joining me this evening, as I mentioned, Wayne County Commissioner Ken Paust. Thank you very much for being here and agreeing to do this with us. Yes. I'm going to start with you because, again, I always tell people you don't always know people's background. We're not going to go a long time, but you've been in government work in and around Wayne County in the city of Richmond for?
Over 40 years.
Okay. And you've been on both sides of the street.
Yes, I've been on the city side for 20 years on city council, off and on. And then in 1993, I moved to the county side and filled out the rest of the term of Kenny Mills, who originally was a city council person, then went to county council. And Kenny passed away, and I had run for mayor, was not elected, and thought, well, what am I going to do now? And a few months later, this position opened up, and I thought, gee, well, I know city government. It's time for me to learn county government. Why don't I go to the caucus, see if I could get elected to that? And I was fortunate enough to be elected, so I've been on the county side since 1993, although the county still considers me the city boy, and that'll probably never go away.
There's always those lines.
It's always there, yes. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the time not only on the city side, but on the county side. And it works very well because I know what the city's doing, and it helps me to be able to work not only with Mayor Snow, but to work with currently now Council President Misty. And so it all helps, and we try to work together and do the projects. You mentioned one, which we're all trying to work on, is the Reed Hospital project on there, and that's going to be an ongoing project for a few years yet, but we're working on it, yes.
Okay. County government, a little bit different than city in some ways. City has mayor elected, council elected, clerk elected.
That's correct.
Countywide,
we have 11. More than that. Well, we have 11 constitutional offices, so those are all elected positions, as well as the county council. And so those are different. You know, the mayor has the opportunity that if Eric Marsh is not doing his job as communications director for the city of Richmond on there, he can say, Eric, it's been a pleasure working with you, but here's your pink slip on there. On the county side, you can't do that. You have all these folks, so it's a matter of, I need the cooperation of all these elected officials on there as we're trying to do different things within the county, as we're working on different programs, and it takes the cooperation of all those folks, because they very frankly can tell me, go fly a kite. You know, I'm elected to this office. I'll run it the way I want to run it on there, and you can't tell me otherwise. So it is a case where we all have to collaborate together to do what's best for the taxpayer for Wayne County.
And there was time when there's always been conversation. Why don't you combine government? And people were suggesting combining the auditor and some other offices and things of that nature, and you all kind of had to push back a little bit.
When we did the joint commission that I put together in 2010, and we put the citizens group together, and John Ford and David Fulton were my co-chairmans on that. And it was very interesting because these citizens, the first thing we had to do is try and explain what county government. They pretty much knew city government a little bit, but had no idea about county government. And the more they got into it, a lot of the ideas and suggestions, you're right. They said, well, let's take the auditor and let's take the treasurer and we'll combine those into one offices. Well, makes sense today. But when our fathers put that together, that was a balance they had. You had the treasurer and the auditor to balance each other. And the treasurer carries the daily cash book on there, and they have to balance with the auditor. And that's a check that they put in place many years ago. And we always say county government was not put in place to function efficiently. And because you have all these... You admit
that publicly.
Oh, we do, because you have all these checks and balances that you have on there, which you don't have on the city side. You have one city controller is what you have. Well, we have the auditor and we have the treasurer. In essence, we have two, and they have to work together on there to be able to move forward on projects that we have. So it does get very interesting in there at times.
Okay. We're going to spend maybe the first half, maybe a little bit more of this show talking about the facilities of county government. And right now, the amount of money and some of the projects that are being worked through to keep those things up. Because you've got, and I didn't realize it actually till you all started talking about it, you all have a number of different buildings in a number of different places. The highway department has this, the fairgrounds has that. I was never thinking about all that really falling under one facilities group.
Yeah, mostly they think the courthouse and the annex. That's
what you see most of.
We actually have 23 facilities that we're responsible for. and being able to maintain those throughout all the years on there. And they are, you know, you have the courthouse, you have the annex, you have about 12 or 13 properties on the fairgrounds that we have. And we have the jail, we have the health center, and we have the highway department with all their buildings. So we have a lot of structures that are around the county in there that we're responsible for. And as you well know, because you filmed most of us, and we've tried to, my goal's always been to try and look out in the future to see what we need. And if you know what you're going to need and you can plan for that, then we can have the funding in place to be able to do what we need to do. So back in 2010, we hired Umball and Associates to come in and do a financial study and to look at Wayne County. We felt we were in a very good position at that point and we're doing all the right things. They did come in and did a nice report for us, which is a little bit thicker than this report here that they did for us, and made several suggestions on funds and areas, permits, for example, that we hadn't raised the cost for getting permits, that we should look at that, and the health department for the inspections they do, for the inspections we do in our buildings department also. So we began to look at those things and to increase those prices, because it's been like 15, 20 years, and we know the cost has gone up to be able to do all those inspections.
Now, that, I'm going to say, I'm going to stop you periodically, but that's a conversation that the city has also had. And how do you balance that as a public servant, deciding to raise the fee that somebody has to pay for something, knowing that that's a taxpayer and you don't want to take money from the taxpayer? How does that discussion go, and how do you come to the point where you say, yeah, we are going to raise that?
We do. We take a long, hard look at what we're actually charging. We try and do some calculations as to what is it costing us to go out. If you're building a new home and we have to come out, we may have 4 or 5 trips that we may have to come out to inspect. So when you're putting the foundation in to start with, we're going to be out to check that to make sure the dollars and cents that you're paying some contractor to do that you're getting your money's worth, plus it's done correctly on there. And so we'll look at that to see about what that's costing us, and we look at what we're charging for the permit. And in most cases, if we charge you what it actually cost us, you'd really squirm a little bit on there, and we don't. Those numbers are relatively low for what we charge for the inspections that we have to do on there. And so that's kind of what we look at it. And when we do raise it, it's a minimal amount that we do raise. It's not like we go in and raise it $500, $600, or $1,000 at one time on there.
Okay. So you all were doing the financial report.
We did the financial
Everything is coming
report.
back in pretty good shape. And right now, I think you could say county government, for having come through what was a pretty strong recession and hurt a lot of communities.
It did.
Wayne County government actually seems to be in pretty good shape financially.
We came through very well, and because of good planning, very frankly, is what it all boils down to. You take the 2010 Joint Commission report, which we started before we did the 2012 with Umball and Associates on there. And, we did them in 2010, then we brought them back in 2012, and they did 4 years of projections to 2016 for us on there. And we worked on that, and even it goes back to, you'll remember Marge Sharp was on county council on there. And when Marge Sharp was president of county council and I was chairman of the finance committee, we looked at that and decided we did not have enough working capital within Wayne County to pay our bills. Now, as a county government, we get a paycheck twice a year at tax time. So we have to have enough money from January to June till we get our tax draw to be able to pay the bills. So at that time, we were at about $3 million, not quite there. And Marge and I decided we were going to beginning to work with the county budget that we do to build that working capital that we need. And we did. We built that. And then as we worked with Umballs and the others, we graduated, and our goal in 2016 was to be at $6,500,000 on there. We actually ended up the year at about $7 million. So we were right on schedule, and on the Umball report and their little graph, we were right on there. And so we've worked very hard to do that. Some people say, well, you ought to reduce taxes and not do that. Well, then, if you don't, you got to go borrow money. Well, that's going to cost you as a taxpayer more money, so we really don't want to do that. And so we're at that number now, so we have that working capital, and that's what I wanted to have done, and we've got there, and it's taken the cooperation of all these 11 constitutional, plus county council as they look at the budget, and we budget everything to build that so we have that number that we need so we can pay our bills.
Now, some of the bills you have to pay is maintenance. And you just mentioned you've got multiple buildings, multiple locations, health department, jail, and jail, we've heard, very expensive. So you brought in a company, DLZ, to go through all of your buildings and give you some idea as to what shape you were in there.
That's correct. We did do that. We hired DLZ. This is just one of the volumes of books that DLZ, you can see how thick that is, and I have a couple of these volumes on there. This particular volume here is volume 1 that I'm working with, and we finished this plan back in November of 2014 when we presented it to County Council and all of our department heads on here. And throughout this, they looked at all 23 structures that we have and evaluated each one of those for several different things. Easy ones are heating, air conditioning, roofs, painting, and things like this. And out of that, what I work with now, which I'm hoping you can maybe pick up on here, and I'll try and hold this nice and steady for you. If you could zero on in us on every building that we have charts like this. It's called a Gantt chart, which lists all the different, there we go, I've got it squared up a little bit. And it has all the different items. And you see on there, the red ones is the ones we have to worry about. If we have
That's a lot of red on that page.
There's a lot of red. Well, that takes you out to 2040 is where we actually are there on this chart.
Okay, so this is a long-term plan.
This is a long-term plan that looks out, and it tells us then when we have to start working on a project. For example, here on building exterior sealants, okay, that's the courthouse. That should have been done in 2002. So here we are now in 2017. Of course, we didn't do this till 2014, you know. But in 2002, when you look back at when the last time was that we did that in the courthouse, we should have sealed that. So we work off of this now, and I have another whole folder, and I brought all my folders, Eric, because you asked all these questions, and you want to know numbers and times, so I can flip in and pull them out and answer your questions on there. But
I ask the questions that people sometimes bring up to me.
Well, it is good, and I used this same set of folders here on the speech I gave at Kiwanis Club, and it worked very well because as they asked some of the detailed questions, very frankly, I can't remember all of that stuff. We have too much going on. I have over 36 projects underway right now that we're working on. And so I have to cheat sometimes and go pull a folder to look like if you ask me when we get to weights and measures how many inspections we did, I have to read that number. But this has worked very well. What we found when they did this, and they gave us their estimated cost best they could at the time on there, we're looking at roughly somewhere between $7 and $10 million that we're going to need to expend over the next few years here to do maintenance on all of our facilities.
Next 5, next 10, less than that?
No, less than that. I would say within the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to need to make those expenditures that we have.
$7 to $10 million.
$7 to $10 million. So one of the big questions we look at, as I said earlier, how do we plan ahead for that? Well, Council has done a good job, and they've allocated, like this year, they've allocated a little over $1 million for us to use on these different projects that we have going on. And then some of the projects, for example, we just opened the bids Wednesday for the jail. We have 2 projects underway there. The funding for those projects, though, comes out of the bail, or not the bail, but out of the bond fund that we have when we initially borrowed money and issued bonds to be able to build the Sheriff's Department and the building that we have there. So the bids we opened Wednesday was for $1,017,000 for a water arrestor system that we have to do inside on there. And then we're doing a problem with leaks that we had on the roof, and that's about a $2.25 million project we have. Both of those will be underway here, some yet this April here, but by May they'll all be underway and moving on that particular project. We also have the courthouse that we're working on, and right now, as you see on the outside, you see a lot of concrete. That's another area, that's ADA, and we get into that, and we'll talk about ADA, but the courthouse itself, was kind of back in 1978. We did some remodeling in there and repairs in there. At the same time, we built the new annex building that we needed to do in 1978. So that structure is about 40 years old also. And so the courthouse itself is well over 100 years old. And you know, at the time, that courthouse was built for $400,000 is what it cost to build that. And we had 5 million bricks, and sometimes I wonder where are all the bricks and stones that were in there, and over 600 cars of limestone that they brought in to build that structure on there. We're now evaluating the heating system in there. As we look on our Gantt chart in there, the heating system's good for roughly 20 to 25 years on there. And it depends. You can get 20 years to get a breakdown. You can get 25. Some people, if the system just right, you might get 30 years. But the question is to look at that and plan ahead and determine when is the right time to go ahead and to replace those facilities that you have. And my feeling is I don't want it to break down in February and the heating system goes whop, or in July I don't want 90-degree weather and the air conditioning goes down. So we have DLZ studying that and working on the entire system, and we will bring that up to a point of where we're ready to bid, that we have everything on the table ready to go. And then we'll determine whether we want to bid that yet this year or bid it the first of next year. But once we bid it, we'll get an idea for sure exactly what the cost is going to be able to do that. And we're anticipating that cost could be as much as $1 million on there to be able to go in and do the entire heating system that we have.
I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier, because I'm sure, and it's a question that comes to my mind. I can understand work being done on the annex building. It's a 40-year-old, as you mentioned, structure. You have to keep those up. You do things on your house. The courthouse, without a doubt. The jail and the health center. There's some major work being done there. Neither one of those facilities are that old, and the amount of money being talked about to put into those structures is something that some people have gone, okay, what went wrong in the building of those that you're going back in and having to do this now?
What you run into in the, let's take the jail first in there. And what we're doing in there was leaks on the metal roofing that was in there that got into the building, actually got into the sheriff's office himself. That's where it first started leaking in there. And so we had a mold problem in that, and we were able to get in and we were able to stop the leaks on there. And to answer your direct question of what went wrong, I'm not an engineer, and I can't tell you exactly why the darn thing's leaking, but it's leaking. The unfortunate part about that jail's a little over 12 years old. The warranty on some of those things had run out. And so the cost to be able to repair that was going to fall on Wayne County in there. The water arrestor system that we have in the structure in there, there is a lot of copper in there. And unfortunately, copper does sometimes have a tendency to spring little leaks in there. And the water arresters that are in, a plumber could explain this much better than I can, but as that water runs through that piping and it gets to the end on there, it hits that with a tremendous amount of pressure on there. And so the way it was designed, let's just say it was maybe not designed correctly on there, and we're going to have to go in and correct that now and replace that piping that we have that's in there. And at the same time, the showers that are in the facility there and so on, we're making major changes in there. Now remember this, even though it's only 12 years old, we anticipate in a jail that a year is equal to 3 years. That it's rough. People within that occupy the facility do not take care of it. If you recall, recently there was a lot of objects that were placed in the toilet, flushed down into the drains, plugged everything up. We had to hire folks to come in. One of the things that we found out in the design of the building, they did not have traps in the area of where all the plugs was, so we had to go in and dig up the cement and get into the pipes and cut to be able to get in, to eel all that out, to get stuff back to working so our clients could take showers.
See this on the front side?
Well, that's my question. I've asked that, and of course the architectural firm that we use to actually build the jail and engineer it's out of business today and gone, and so you can't go back to those folks on there. There were traps there, yes, but they were in an area that was open, and where the plugs was, we couldn't get into those, and that's how we had to open those up on there. And yes, we don't want to spend those money to do that. And I asked the same question. These people build jails all the time, and other jails are getting stuff by their clients pushed down the drains and the toilets all the time. Why does this happen to us? Now, the other part of the water is the water problem that we have here in eastern Indiana. It is very hard in some cases on there. Now, Indiana American meets all the qualifications they have to have for our drinking water. It's safe, there's no problem there. But it is a problem, it eats away at stuff. Okay. And you talk to some of the plumbers here, and they'll tell you in a certain area, all of a sudden they get the same calls on the toilets, you know, and they go in and it's the same problem where the water is ate away on some of the plastic. All this stuff's plastic anymore, and the water's eating that up, so they have to put a whole new part in on there. Kind of the same thing has happened to us in the jail, and the water's eating away on this. So all the new material that we're putting in, this shouldn't happen with that. So that's the answer to your questions when people, but think about it, it's really closer to a 32-year-old facility.
Okay. All the work being done that people can see around the annex building, is that all ADA, or what is happening around that building?
Most of that, what we're doing right now is ADA. We appointed an ADA director, which was Steve Higginbotham, which was our facility director.
You all keep piling stuff on Steve.
Steve's a good boy.
He's got to have a strong back, because you all just keep piling.
He has been excellent for us. He's willing to take on the challenges on there, and as you'll know, a few years ago I merged our buildings and grounds into our planning department, and by doing that I was able to save $250,000 a year by moving it all into one department. And Steve has been the right individual to be there to run both of those departments for us and to help us save those dollars that we've been able to do. He wrote the manuals that we had to have, and we had to send those into the state, and we have all of those approved now, and we're beginning to implement the things that the federal government says that we have to do. And part of the work that you see going on right now is all concrete work around the old courthouse, and we're beginning now on the annex side, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We're redoing all the curbs, and we're doing all the sidewalks, and we're doing all the steps. And then on the 4th Street side, which a lot of folks think that's a street. Actually, that is a parking lot between the courthouse and the annex. That is a parking lot which the county has full responsibility for. That
wasn't always that way. That's recent.
It was a street, and several years ago we petitioned the city to give that to us, which they did do. The only thing they asked is that we not close both ends of off, so that officers that came out of their police department on a run could go right straight up to A Street and down South A Street. So we have agreed to that, and we've kept that open on there. And so we're redoing all that, and we're putting in wheelchair areas, and also a wheelchair area for delivery people with two-wheelers and stuff that they can wheel up into there. So we're redoing all of that at this time. And then on the annex side, we're making all of our entrances available for handicap. If you'll think, when you come in the morning, you come in the south entrance, and you can hit the handicap part there, and the door swings out, swings south. Mm-hmm. If you're in a wheelchair, the ramp goes down. And if you're in a wheelchair, you'll slide back down that ramp. So what we're doing now, we're reworking that, we're changing the grade, and we're making more space at the top of that ramp so that a person in a wheelchair can come up, sit on a flat area, push the button, the door will open, and he can sit right there. And when the door's open, then he can wheel his wheelchair right straight in. So we're doing that on the south entrance. We'll be doing that on the west entrance also here. The entrance that you see we're working on right now on the east side has been closed for years because that's been a very, very steep ramp. So that's been closed, and we have not utilized that. So we're putting a whole new entryway in there. And as you know, we recently acquired the lot from U.S. Bank, and we have 45 parking spaces there south of US Bank. So all those folks will be able to come in the new entrance, and we're changing that, and you'll kind of come down like this and turn and come down, so it'll be very easy for people to walk in that. That entrance will not be handicap accessible as far as wheelchairs go. They will have to come down to the south ramp to be able to come that way on there. But we will have that area available for those folks to be able to use. And we have new signs which are ordered now that will be placed on the parking lot areas. And we'll have the little stickers to hang on your rear view mirrors. Those lots will be color coded, and if you are somebody else and you park in there, you will get a ticket once we get our signs up and everything. The same way on that lot as the south lot.
Most of those lots, most of the parking in that lot going to be for employees, leaving the parking closest to the annex for
the citizen, for the taxpayer coming in. Our goal is to be able to open up as many spaces in the direct south lot right next to the annex that we can for the taxpayer, the same as on 4th Street. Sounds easy. Oh, okay, we just open all that up. 4th Street, we just open all that, and that's all for visitors on there. This will be my 4th time around on assigning parking spaces on there, and it's definitely not easy because you get all these spatial requests. One, we have to have X number of handicap spots available on there. At the same time, we have around 12 to 13 county vehicles that on that lot are in and out of there all day long. So the question is, do we allow them to keep coming in there because they may be in there for 5 minutes, park and run, and then leave again, but then another county vehicle may come in and go out. So that takes up quite a bit of the parking space. Well, we're looking at that now to figure out, well, could we put them in the lot on the south side? Could we put them on the lot that's on the other side of what used to be the Prime Realty building on there and have them walk all the way out? Well, we've kind of looked at the timing frame on that, and we're looking at it in a day's time. How much working time would we lose if they have to park way down there and walk all the way in and then walk back? So it's been very interesting as we're beginning to do that, and then this is a small town. Everybody wants the ramps there, and everybody wants to park right here, Eric, right there in that one spot.
And there's going to be a WCTV spot that's
right there for you to unload with all your equipment and stuff like that. Then on certain days, like when you come in, we have county council comes in, the commissioners are there. So very quickly that lot can swell by 13 or 14 cars that are just there for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and then they leave again. So we're working on that. It's going to be interesting, and I know some of our employees will moan and groan because they have to walk, and I've heard it before, you know, but it fits into our wellness program.
I thought
that. And that you lead me into wellness.
I have to do this. If I don't do this, you're going to be mad at me. You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV, Channel 11. We're speaking with Wayne County Commissioner President Ken Paust about Wayne County government and some of the things that they're doing. We're going to move this along because, believe it or not, we're over halfway done with the show.
Oh, gee whiz. We're just getting started.
Let's talk about the fairgrounds real quick because there's a couple of things going on. You all have had a number of conversations about the fairgrounds. That is a place that over the years some people have felt was not utilized enough, but also now Don Wampler, who has been there
26 and a half years.
Okay, almost as long as longer than I've been in almost as long as I've been in town, as a fixture, has decided to retire, and that's seems relatively sudden.
Well, we had anticipated, actually I was hoping Don would be around another 3 or 4 years on there because we'd talked to Don about when are you thinking of retiring, you know, and well, I'm not thinking about it at the moment, you know, it's going to be another 3 or 4 years, and we are looking at doing a lot of different things out there right now, and we really need Don's experience, but even though he's retiring, Don says, hey, I'm only a phone call away. I'm willing to talk about anything. If you have committees, I'm willing to serve on a committee or anything because I believe in this fairgrounds. So we've lost him, but we haven't really lost him. Okay. And so as we look at this right now, how do we replace the individual that we have out there? What we've been in the process, as you well know, is taking an overall look at the fairgrounds as how could we bring more income into the fairgrounds to make that more sustainable out there. County Council allocates about $400,000 a year to that facility. And we bring in about, Don's done a good job, he's brought in about $140,000 in rental income that he's brought in last year in there. So that's pretty good, but could we do more? So we had Don put a list together of how you rent the facility. How many times do you rent the Resurface facility on the weekend? And so we got some initial numbers on there, and then we looked at it and we said, oh, wait a minute, Don, you've got this, let's say you rented it 5 times. Well, that's just the Resurface Center. Was that on Friday? Was that on Saturday? Or was that on Sunday? So what time is available to us? Now we're going back, preparing an Excel sheet to go back to really put in data what our rentals are. The exact day, how many days are there, to see how much space we actually have available. Then we're working with Mary Walker through the Tourism Bureau on there to see how we better can promote. And we had a meeting back in October of last year. I called a meeting and we brought about 15 to 20 people together to look at the total operations of the fairgrounds and the overall usage on. A lot of ideas came out of that. Some of the early fruit that you can pull was working better with the Tourism Bureau because they really weren't promoting the fairgrounds. We have the largest structure, 45,000 square feet in the Resurface Center in the state of Indiana. There's no other fairgrounds have any, unless you go to the Indiana State Fair area. There's
no other county that has a facility as large as the Resurface Center on their grounds.
That's correct. 45,000 square feet in that facility. So Mary said, well, okay, so they've started looking. There's all types of associations. You know, you have beef and you have lambs, you have chickens, and you have rabbits, and you can just go on and on and on. They all have organizations that we could go at to see if they could come here for a conference or for meetings. So as we're getting into that, we're looking more at the Resurface Center, and we have a lot more study to do on this to determine, okay, what else could we use? We have 45,000 square feet. That's a lot of space. Right. Could we have breakout rooms? We know there's a need for a caterer's kitchen within the Resurface Center complex. We do have that in the Kuhlman Center, but not Resurface on there. So could we have breakout rooms on there? There was a discussion about showers in that facility also. And so we're beginning to look at that. We've looked at the restroom facilities that are in the middle, and there's been a lot of articles in the newspaper, unfortunately, front page showing how bad they are. And they really are bad. Sure. And in the day when that was built, they painted it on there, and the paint peels off. It's just on cinder block on there. So we've looked at replacing the restroom facilities in there, and initially we're trying to be able to accomplish that before the fair this year. But it was obvious as things went along that that wasn't going to happen. And as we got indications from council, they weren't too interested in putting showers out there. And the more we're looking into this and what I'm beginning to find out, people don't shower. They may shower at home, but they don't out in public. And I found out from Ron Mays the other day, who does all the schools, and stuff, they don't put showers in the schools anymore. Even the athletic teams, when they get done, they put their sweats on and they leave. In my day, you went, you took a shower and everything, you got dressed, you know, and then you left. And he says, we don't build showers. So then we started looking, the folks that use the fairground, how far are they away from home? Well, we found in most cases, within 15 minutes, they could be at home. So if they wanted to take a shower, well, they could go home. We also looked into rentals, and we found that we could rent facilities. The first one we found was going to be $14,000, but you had to rent it for a month. And then we kept looking, and we had facilities that would rent it for 2 or 3 days or a week, and you could bring those in. So one of the things we said this year, if you really need showers, then the fairgrounds need to step up, the fair board, and you can rent them. But I don't think that's going to happen. So the conversation
now is replacing Don, but maybe looking at somebody that does something different, reworking
yeah, we're trying to look. We've got his job description out, and Commissioner Butters has looked at that, and Mary Ann's very good with typing and the written word on there, and so she's redrafting that for us, and so we're working with that now as a starting point to look at that and say, okay, for what we're thinking about in the future, now how would we change the job description for an individual out there? One of the things you mentioned earlier is all the work that we've given to Steve Higginbotham on there, okay? As we look at this, and if you recall a few months ago, we put the fairgrounds under the buildings and grounds, that we felt that's where it belonged, under facilities. We have 13 facilities out there. So do we look for another assistant that we put under Steve with a lot of his responsibility being the fairgrounds on there? And do you look for a person that may have event planning and other skills that we haven't thought about in that area in the past? So those are some of the things we're looking at. We've got to get more people together. We want to take enough time here now that whatever we do, we look and we hire the right person.
Okay. You've got some show and tell over here, and I'm going to kind of jump because there's two things I want to try to do. One, road construction has been incredibly important in this community. We're seeing road construction taking place like we haven't for a while. Before we get to that, something that the county took over from the city about, you said 3 years ago we were talking.
3 years ago.
I thought it was two. Weights and measures.
Weights and measures.
You know, I'd heard weights and measures, didn't realize how incredibly important it was. But you've got some things. Why don't you pull that forward?
I did bring some things. Let's do gasoline first, all right? We go out and we did last year 1,302 inspections. Now think about gas pumps. When you go in, you look and you'll see they may have 5 stations. Well, in most filling stations, you have 3. You may only have 1 spigot, but you'll have 89, 92, or 93 different. And so at a pump, you really have 6 there. So when we go in, we have 6 pumps that we really have to gauge on there when we go in. So when we look at that, gasoline is measured, I found out, in cubic inches, which I did not realize, not by gallons, but in cubic inches. And we measure in 5-gallon increments. And this is the amount of gas that you can be short on 5 gallons and still comply with all the laws that are available on gasoline. So it's just that much right there on a 5-gallon can. So I found that to be quite interesting on there, and folks say, well, that's really interesting on there. And so we inspect those pumps every year on there. And at the same time, something new that we're doing recently now is a lot of those are at convenience stations, Village Pantry, and so on like that. Right. The latest thing that we're now inspecting is propane tanks. And since they've put those outside, they're usually in lock and key, and you can go in and you can take your propane. We're now testing all those and making sure that you got the right amount of weight that's required for you to have in those. And so we're checking those. The other things, a lot of those will have kindling wood, you know, and you'll get a rack about like such. We now check all those to make sure you're getting the amount of wood that you're paying for that they'll say on there. So those are a couple of interesting things. The other ones that I found real interesting were these items here that our inspectors check. When you go to the grocery store and you go to the deli or you go to the meat counter on there, there are a lot of things like this one right here. This is let's just say this has a pound of hamburger in here, right. and this is called Terra. And in here you'll have something like this, which is usually on the bottom to accept any blood that you have on there. And then you have the package container here, and then this is all shrink wrap. Well, you're not supposed to pay for all of that. You're only supposed to pay for the hamburger.
Correct.
And so our inspectors will go in and will weigh all of this to make sure that you're getting that pound of hamburger. Same way in the deli. You go into the deli, and in this case, this was apples and grapes. And it weighed 4.49 pounds, or $4.49 a pound, and then this weighed 0.63 pounds. So we will weigh all of this to make sure that the grocery store is not including this in the price to get extra money. And we will find on occasions, in one case we got a call from the state of Indiana where a manufacturer in this case said, we think there was an error on a package. So we went to one of the major markets in town here to check skids. They had 5 skids of this merchandise stacked about this high. And in there, we checked this and weighed all of it, and sure enough, the manufacturer was right. The scales, the way they had been set, did not take out or take into consideration the tariff. So all this had to be packed up and shipped back to the manufacturer on there. So those are just some of the things that we're doing to protect you as a consumer. At the same time, it protects the filling station owners, because we had one, there's only been one case that I know of in this, where the owner was losing money on gasoline and he could not figure out why. And we were in there, and after we had done our test, we figured out why. He was giving more gasoline to you than what the pump actually registered on there. And that's where he was losing all of his money, because he was giving you a good deal on there. And I tried to find out before I came out tonight, because we have it in our records, how much, but I know it was over a gallon. If you bought like 6 or 7 gallons, that he was giving more than a gallon away on there. And I was trying to find out for sure whether it was 5, 6, 10 gallons or where it was. But he was giving enough away.
As expensive as gas was, it's come down in a couple of years.
He knew that he was losing money, and fortunately we got around for our yearly inspection. We found out, well, then he got in and brought people in, and they corrected the pumps. And at the same time, we looked for the skimmers that are in there for people that come in to try and get your credit card numbers and everything on there. And people say, do you really check for that? And we said, oh yeah, and it's very easy to get into. They can go in and boom, and they're done just like that. And so what I recommend to folks is that when you go into the filling station, if you're going to use a credit card, you take the pump that's the closest to the building, where the employees are, to where they can see if somebody happens to open one of those doors to put one of those in there. So there's a couple little tips on there, but we have 3 certified inspectors. They do just a super excellent job on checking that. You know, people, for example, we go to the schools, we check all the scales for the wrestlers to make sure they're accurate. Okay. This is a picture down at the Richmond Municipal Airport, and we check their tanks, and we check that when they fuel airplanes down there, and we actually pump gas out of there, and that's how we check their meters. The same as we do, like last year, we pumped 19,000 gallons of gas as we went around the county checking all the gasoline pumps. Now, not only do we have to pump that out, we have to put it all back in. We have to put all that back in. I thought folks would appreciate this. This is just one of our pieces of equipment. We have a couple of other people, and we have a nice white truck that pulls a big container, and it has our logo on there for Wayne County that when we pull in. So we try and look as official and as appraisal. Kent Harlan, Hollengard is our chief inspector on that, and he's just done a super excellent job for us on there.
Nice. You're watching In Focus.
That's kind of cute.
Whitewater Community Television's WGTV, Channel 11. We're talking with Ken Paust, president of the Wayne County Commissioners. People have been surprised at what the commissioners have to get into since we started doing those meetings. We got a chat question in. Somebody actually had a question for you. Good. So let's go to that and see what that is. Can you discuss any conversations you've had with city administration around creating a position that might mirror what Pete McDaniel is doing for Wayne County government? And for those who may not know, and you said you've started introducing people as they come up and talk to you all.
That's right.
Pete McDaniel is your Veteran Services Officer for Wayne County.
My guess is he sent that in.
And we've got a lot of veterans in this area that need some service. Pete really only works on a part-time basis.
Pete has been just outstanding for us. He's done an excellent job on there. Pete and I last year were looking at his particular office, and what we wanted to do was to try and have more folks available in that office to be able to file for, let's say you're a veteran and you come in, you may be entitled to aid, and to be able to file that, fill all the paperwork out and send it in. As we're talking with that question, my mind's thinking, I'm trying to think how many dollars it was last year, and I'm going to use a number of $38 million. Now, that was the number that we brought into this community with veterans. It may have been physical, or may have been something else, may have been retirement that we brought into this community. And I think that number is right. And Grant County is one that we've looked at that has more folks than we have, and they've brought in, I think, in the $68 million range, and that's the range. But it's been a while since I've worked on this, but I'm hoping my number, Pete, if you're the one that sent it in, I hope I got the right number. But I've talked to the city of Richmond, I talked to the mayor on this, that what I would like for them to do initially is to pay for a part-time person, a half-time person, or to give us another full-time person, so we could have a county person and we could have a let's say a city person, but in essence, what I asked for is, would you fund another person? The county would hire that person, and we would staff that person. We would have the office, we would provide the electricity, we'd provide the insurance, we'd provide all that stuff. And you would fund that. We put them down in the office with Pete McDaniels on there. So I have had that discussion. And at the time when I initially talked with Dave Snow, Dave's brand new into his position on there.
Right.
And he says, Ken, I don't know. He says, could we put that off for another year? And I said, no, I don't want to put it off for another year. We need it now because we can do such a good job for the veterans. And we have more veterans that are becoming qualified now from the time when they're coming back from Afghanistan and so on. So there is a real need for this. And so that's what we are working on. I hope I can continue to work with the mayor. I know the mayor has not forgotten about it on there, and we're getting ready to go into another budget year, and I'll certainly be talking with him about that, and I'm hoping that he can maybe include that within his budget for 2018 on there, and then we can put that other person in there. So in essence, we'd have one full-time person, be two part-times, but we'd have one full-time because we keep the office open all the time.
Right.
And so that would work out very well on there. And like I said, the number of dollars that it brings, not only does it help the veterans, but it helps the economy that we have here in the Wayne County area.
Okay. We are at 8 minutes left to go, believe it or not.
Gosh,
we're going to have you back. It's okay. I see the files. We'll have you back. But the other thing I want to cover is you've got a big board behind you, and we're going to drive our people crazy because we're going to stand up because there are a couple of things that have come up in the area of, and Ryan won't be able to talk to me for a minute.
Okay.
In the area of construction. And you brought an update.
I did.
And we're going to try to do this, and we're probably not going to do it very well, but we're going to do it anyway.
I put it here. That may steady it a little bit on there.
So, the county is involved in a lot of this. We had some conversation about this. What's the first area that probably needs to be pointed out?
Well, let me explain initially here. We have two colors on the map. We have the yellow and we have the pink. All the pink that you see are state projects that are going to be underway here in 2017. The yellow are county projects that we have going on this year also. This year, 2017, is going to be, I'm calling it the construction year, because we've never had a year like this where we've had this many projects going on, not only in the county, but as well in the state of Indiana. And a lot of these are going to filter over into 2018 also to be able to complete those. But if you look in the city of Richmond, the one that is North 20th Street Bridge is the one that is affecting most of the folks now. Those signs went up just recently on North 20th Street so that you can't get across that bridge, and there's several other ways to get on there. The other one that will be coming up in the next few years will be North 24th Street, which when you go across the 20th Century Bridge down here, you go on Hawkins and you go down and come up on New Paris Pike on there. So that is another city project, but that won't affect quite as many people as North 20th Street does on there.
Okay.
Let's talk for a moment about the biggest project, which is Gar Jackson. That's the Blue Buffalo project, and that is underway right now. And we're in the process of getting the easements that we need to get from all the folks on each side of the north and south side of Gar Jackson right now. As you know, Blue Buffalo has got a lot of the steel up, and in some areas they're enclosing the facility in Blue Buffalo.
I drove through there. They're moving pretty quickly.
They're moving pretty quickly, and we're moving along. 2018 is the target date in February on there to be able to try and get some of those projects underway. The other big thing is 35 and 38, and those folks that drive that all the time, there's major projects. So folks in Hagerstown need to take one. From Hagerstown, you need to take one, and of course the state's doing the bridge over I-70, but they do have mechanical stop and go lights there, so you'll be able to get down to I-70 or on down to 40 and come in. So you would be able to do that. And so we just learned later today that there's going to be another project on there that's probably going to hit about right in here also. So it's just
nice.
And you can see up in economy what we've got going on in there. We got the bridge rehab on Martindale Creek on there. And then we got the culvert replacing on
and that's
Morgan
April
Creek.
to December
that's
on that
April,
one.
and this one's April on there. Then down in Hagerstown on 38 on the bridge replacement. Well, I'm sorry, that's, I want to go over to here. The culvert is 1011 that we're doing the culvert down here, and that's going to be closed pretty much the rest of the year on that one. Will be closed out on there. And then down in Cambridge City, we're working on the superstructure and replacement of Bridge 512, and that'll be closed all year. And then clear down on this one, you can see on that superstructure, that's Bridge 247 on Dale Avenue that's in Cambridge City. That's going to be closed till the fall. And then we're doing right in here, we're replacing a bridge 130, and that project will start in the spring, and early summer we may have that one finished on there. So you can see what's happening on here. There's just a lot going on, and we just learned recently now on the city side, they're going to do from 1st Street out to 17th Street to the Dairy Queen. They're going to come in and pull 3/4 of an inch off of that and come back in and resurface all that also.
And you all just found that one out?
I just found that one out, yeah, today, yes.
Nice.
So it's been interesting.
Okay.
All right. So,
that actually worked out. Here, let's do this.
Do we have any more time? There's one thing I'll mention that they'll be seeing happen that will affect them, and that is in part of the ADA that we're working on. We have 37 restrooms within our facility, and we have to make all of those ADA compliant. So we've done a phase 1 study on those, and we're now up to where we know we have 14 restrooms that we're going to have to work on to make ADA compliant. So folks that are coming into our facilities will see that we're in the process of doing those restrooms. So if you see a sign that says no restroom available, you know we're in the process of updating those and getting everything able to go on there. And so it is moving along. We do have several things that are happening on there, and it's interesting and exciting. Are you wired up?
I think so. I can get the voice back in my head.
I thought I brought all these things
No,
on there.
I'm not sorry that you brought all of those things. Thank you.
The other thing you will see in the courthouse real quick, the railing that goes around on the 2nd floor, we're in the process of installing glass on there. And everybody asks, what's that for? That's so we got dinged with OSHA and our insurance on there so somebody can't fall over.
They're not high enough.
They're not, the railings are not high enough. So what we're doing, we're having to drill down into that marble, and we're putting the glass in there, and that'll go all the way around there so that nobody can fall. And that you'll be able to see once you go into the courthouse. And then we probably won't get there this year, but we've got to redo the whole front entrance of the courthouse there for the same reason, so that the wheelchairs can come up and sit there and all the doors can open. So that'll be a whole new entrance into there.
And that's where I have to stop you, because he's about to tell me 30 seconds. Okay. And he did. Thank you for watching this week's In Focus. We're going to have you back because there are 5 things that I can think of off the top of my head that I didn't get a chance to get to.
All right.
Thank you for watching In Focus. We will be back next Thursday. If you came in during part of this show replays beginning at 10:30 tonight. It will also be available on WGTV Online, our video on demand site. We'll be back next Thursday with a special program about speech at RHS. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
This broadcast of In Focus has been made possible through the support of Reed Health. Reed Health, right beside you. And by First Bank Richmond, with 8 locations serving Wayne County. First Bank Richmond and you, doing great things together.
Watch Wayne County Connections on WGTV Channel 11, Tuesdays at 6. I'm your host, Michael Swigert, and this month we're in a series, Meet Your Wayne County Officers. Our guests this month are Jonathan Ferris from the Purdue Extension Services, Don Wampler from the Fairgrounds, and Bob Connington, Wayne County Auditor. Watch Wayne County Connections, Tuesdays at 6 on WGTV Channel 11.
You are watching Whitewater Government Television, Channel 11.